All right, Aaron, D, it's good to see you. This is the first ever Salesforce Revenue Cloud office hours hosted by yours truly and Carvin's Consulting, my business. The reason I put this together is because there is a shortage of Revenue Cloud training out there. There are a lot of questions that go unanswered or difficult to answer. You'll see things posted in the community, and while the answers to those questions might be correct, it's often more helpful to talk through things with people and to take that idea or the problem that we're trying to solve and work on it together, because you have the context about what's the problem that I'm trying to work through. Maybe I have some different experience that I can bring to it or different expertise that I can bring to it. And then together we can work through all this together. So that's kind of the goal of office hours. We're going to do this every week for a while. We're going to try this as an experiment. Maybe it'll take off. Maybe it'll flop. I don't know. I'm treating this like agile software development. We're going to try some stuff and figure out what we should do based on how that turns out. I have some ground rules for these calls. First, be helpful, be kind, be smart. In that order, we're here to help each other learn and grow and build our Revenue Cloud skills. One of the best ways to learn is by teaching. That's part of why I wanted to do this, is to keep my own skills sharp. Be kind. Salesforce Ohana, let's keep this nice, everything above the belt, even if there's competitors on the call or anything like that. There are no stupid questions. There's no silly questions, no wrong questions. And then be smart. Bring your experience to the table. All experience has value. We all have different perspectives. All of those perspectives will bring a unique flavor to it. They're different ingredients. So we're making some sort of dish with all of our different experience. At all times, protect your company and client information. There's some really sensitive information and data in Salesforce. So we want to keep that in mind at all times and keep things anonymized. And then we wanted to help with that. We're going to generalize the questions so they apply broadly. If it's a specific situation with your company or your client, first, keep the confidentiality aspect in mind. Should I be talking about this at all? Or is there a way I can generalize this in a fashion where this could apply to multiple companies and we're keeping it anonymous? You can always use Acme Corp or something like that as an anonymized thing, or just refer to it as a company or my client or something like that. So we'll keep it general. Those are really the only ground rules that I have. And that's really the only slides that I have, except for a thank you slide at the end for you two especially. Thank you for being the christening members of the office hours call. I'm glad that you're here. Shout out to Salesforce Military Program for helping us get some training that we needed to get started. And then also the Hiring Our Heroes, which is how the two of you met. And we're all, here we are, a bunch of veterans learning how to do some crazy things in Salesforce. With that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we're just going to have a conversation, asking and answering questions. I got my whiteboard here if needed, so that if we need to talk through any ideas, I can whiteboard them, because you can answer a hell of a lot of questions with some rectangles and arrows. It's shocking how much that can simplify things. And for that, I'll open the floor. What questions do you have? It's all fair game.
Perfect. So John, this is Erin, as you can see. So a great question that I have is, to make the jump into CPQ, what do you think would be the base prerequisites that a Salesforce professional should have to have the basic ground level acumen and knowledge to be successful in CPQ?
That is a great question, and one worthy of some whiteboarding. So just because I need an excuse to use this, I haven't used my whiteboard in a while. What do I need to know, or what skills do I need to build to be successful in CPQ? Let's build this up like a food pyramid kind of thing. Even though the food pyramid is total garbage and not really a good way to eat, but that's a whole other conversation. I'm building a solid foundation of skills. Let me move my microphone around here. Let me know if you can still hear. Building a solid foundation of skills in the Salesforce platform. We're going to think of it in terms of a pyramid. We always want to have a solid base. We'll have this middle layer, various layers. I don't know. This is an arbitrary number of levels. We'll see if I can BS my way into coming up with what each one of these means. I think no matter what, if you're in the Salesforce ecosystem and you're trying to be an expert in anything, You have to know the platform above all, because everything is built on the platform, right? Every single thing in Salesforce is built on the platform. You have to know core. There's no way around it. You have to understand data models. How do data models work? How does the Salesforce security model work? Both of those topics are difficult and complex to learn, but they're both of critical importance. One of the biggest mistakes I see of people who are new to the ecosystem in general, outside of Revenue Cloud, is they get too excited about the automation and not excited enough about data and security, which I don't blame them for feeling that way, because I mean, data model and security model, woohoo, right? Not the most exciting topic in the world. However, you know what's really exciting? A data breach. Your unstructured, non-anonymized, non-obfuscated, non-encrypted data leaked out onto the internet for all the world to see. That's really exciting. Not the type of excitement I'm looking for. I would rather jump out of a plane or something like that, even though I have no interest in parachuting, just for the record. I'm getting that on the recording. So first and foremost, you have to have platform skills. Now, as we narrow into CPQ, which is part of Revenue Cloud, we need to start narrowing our focus so that we can target the right things. I think that the next piece is being deeply and intimately familiar with Sales Cloud. Because as we think about the process of quote to cash, especially that, quote to order piece, the CPQ piece, that is a subset. The quoting process is a subset of the opportunity process, which is a subset of account management, which has all of our different pieces and parts. And even though we don't really mess with leads in CPQ, we still have to understand lead to cash. How do we get those opportunities in the first place? Where do the accounts come from? Where's that data originating? Okay, somebody gave me a business card at an industry event. That goes in as a lead. We convert, we split, blah, blah, blah. So I need to understand how Sales Cloud works. Sales Cloud is the next level thing that I have to know. We're going to get more specific with objects. We're going to start to get into products, price books, price book entries, opportunity management. Perhaps the client or your employer is using standard quotes today. Maybe they're using some sort of other quoting tool that's maybe outside CPQ, outside of Salesforce platform. So we have to start to understand, how does the sales process work? Opportunity management, where does quoting fit inside of that process, and all of that. From there, I think the next progression is really starting to drill deeper into the specifics of Revenue Cloud that we're going to work with. Now, here we got to make the distinction between CPQ and billing. All these years and all these thousands of hours of experience have helped me boil it down to 4 words. All of Revenue Cloud boils down to sell stuff, get money. That's it. That's all. That's what we're trying to do. We're helping companies sell stuff and get money faster. So as a result, it looks like you're frozen. Am I back? Am I back?
Welcome back, John.
Am I back? Okay. So I saw something flicker and then my internet cut off completely. And now I'm tethering to my phone. So backups. All right. It's a good thing this is our first one.
Self.
This is our
Save
pilot.
your work.
Right? What was I talking about when it cut out? I'm curious to see. I think did say we're recording, so the recording is at least back on. Now I'm tethering to my phone. Fantastic. And hell, while I'm thinking about it, I'm just going to plug in my computer. Let this be a lesson to anybody who watches this episode in the future. Number 1, minimum viable product. That's what this is right now. This is a minimum. This is a test. We're just trying some stuff right now, and it ain't all working like it's supposed to. Oh, it's fine. We're just going to pivot. I'm going to plug in my computer so my computer doesn't run out of power while we're talking.
I honestly don't know what you were saying, because it's like you were in the middle of this great explanation and it paused. So I was like, oh, something more is coming. It's just I didn't realize the internet was gone.
And then the dramatic pause just never stopped. And I thought, wow, these two are in rapt attention right now. They're so into this. And then I noticed that Aaron didn't blink for about a minute. And I'm going, wait a minute. I'm not that interesting. Oh man.
I just snorted when I laughed. You gotta edit that out.
I need an outtakes. That's what this needs. I need outtakes. If we get the outtakes, then it's like, oh, it comes full circle then. And actually, where's my plug-in for my phone? Because it's tethering. Well, I still got plenty of power.
How many coins went in the Salesforce swear jar while your internet was out?
None. I don't think any. I just went, wait, did I freeze? And then, well, okay. Truth be told, I probably swore a couple times and didn't even realize it. But I don't know. People argue that there's been some. I don't know how rigorous the research was, but the BuzzFeed headline would be "Studies show science says swearing builds trust." That's what the BuzzFeed headline would say.
And they're more creative.
Yeah, they're more creative. They're handsomer. Whatever. So, all right, let me try this again, since this is now an outtake reel. So the question was, what skill should I start to build, or how should I think about prioritizing things to get into CPQ? And then I think I was talking about, no matter what, you have to know the Salesforce platform. We have to understand what it is, how it works, how the data model works, how the security model works, what automations are available to me, all these different types of things. We got to know the platform, and that's going to apply regardless of where you end up in your Salesforce career. One of the biggest problems I saw in the early days of CPQ is that no one who was doing CPQ understood platform stuff. I came from a background in Salesforce administration. Salesforce military had already paid for me to take the 201 and 211 admin courses. I had already worked as an administrator a couple of years at that point, and then I started learning CPQ stuff. So I already had a fundamental knowledge of Salesforce platform and Sales Cloud specifically. Plus, I had touched Service Cloud a little bit, some Experience Cloud, etc. But I had an admin background. And then I started learning CPQ. And I would encourage anybody to take that path and to really get your admin skills strong first before you get into CPQ. Otherwise, you end up with effectively altitude sickness. You're sitting here at the top of the mountain. I tried to be a weatherman there for a second. It didn't really work. So you're trying to get to the top of the mountain, but you haven't acclimated at the bottom first. And that's what we want to avoid, because then you're going to find yourself in a room with a stakeholder. Maybe they're a technical architect for an enterprise customer, and they ask you some sort of question about the core platform. And you go, well, I don't know, I'm a CPQ person. Well, everything we build in CPQ affects the platform because it's all contained within it. So if I don't understand how the platform works, I'm going to get called out for not knowing my stuff when it comes to a real world situation. And that gets to some of that real world experience, Dee, that you were talking about. And there was a very big client that I had. I was on a project, we'll call it like 30 CPQ consultants. We were carved out for this piece. And there was a larger consultancy that had a bigger chunk of they had most of the project, but the CPQ piece went to the specialists. There's a specific conversation I remember where I was in a room. The other consultancy's technical architect was in the room. Some of our architects were in there. There were other mixes and matches from both consultancies. And some questions started to come up about data and security. And none of the CPQ folks had any clue what was being discussed. And it was painfully obvious. So now you're losing credibility with the other consultancy. And that's going to cause problems downstream because, well, they're going to, like, these guys don't understand platform stuff. And we're going to go, yeah, they don't understand CPQ stuff. Yeah, but everything sits on the platform. So it's, I'm a little concerned because Dee is in rapt attention. Are you frozen? Oh, there's a smile. Okay, great. I honestly wasn't sure because you're just so focused. I'm going, did it freeze again? But that was the scenario. And thankfully, I had enough knowledge of platform stuff that I could have that conversation with the technical architect. But it was an awkward situation for a while until I opened my mouth and said something. I was very new on the project, which is why my mouth was shut. You can't put your foot in your mouth if it's closed. I've learned that the hard way. So, first platform, then Sales Cloud, and then we can start to get into CPQ stuff. Now, Revenue Cloud is, and this is probably where I cut off. All Revenue Cloud is revenue operations. It's all about sell stuff, get money. That's it. Sell stuff is CPQ, get money is billing. And the handshake that happens between the two is the order. Now, I don't want to get tactical right now and start talking about objects and things. That's beyond the scope of the question. But if I understand that we're trying to sell stuff and get money, and we're trying to do both of those things faster, easier, cheaper, blah, 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 insert your favorite modifier, then we understand the principles that are trying to happen. Now, some people, the tricky part of this whole thing is that no one knows everything. And especially when it comes to thinking in terms of the Gestalt, all of Revenue Cloud, nobody knows that. You'll often end up with people who are CPQ specialists, people who are billing specialists. But I would say when you're first getting started, even if you ultimately want to be a billing architect, I would still go CPQ first. Why? I'm glad you asked. I'm going to go with CPQ first because 70 to 80% of the data needed by the billing system comes from the quoting process. And that's from some study that some consultancy did. And I watched a webinar once. You're just going to have to trust me. I could dig around and find out what that was if you really want to. But they were saying how 70+% of your billing data comes from CPQ. So we have to understand how that data is going to flow into billing and how can I get more of the data in the front end of the process, right? Because if I have a timeline here, we've got our lead, then we got our opportunity, then we got our quote, order, invoice. Here's the split that starts to get into, this is CPQ is here. This is Sales Cloud.
Hey, John. For the kids in the back of the class who didn't hear you, can you say what CPQ means?
Oh, yes. So if you're new or in the back of the class, for the people in the back, CPQ is configure, price, quote. I'm going to, and it answers 5 basic questions. What do you sell? How do you sell it? How do you price what you sell? What discounts or how do you discount? And then how do you display all of that and show it to your customer? That's basically what it is. There's a lot more to it, obviously, but those are the 5 general questions we're trying to answer with a CPQ solution. What do you sell? How do you sell it? How do you price and discount? How do you display that in a document? What you'll find when you get on these projects too is that especially the executive sponsors, what they really care about is how does that document look at the end? Does this look like the sort of document that would justify spending $1 million with my business or not? Because if it looks like shit, am I really going to, like, if you can't even get your document to look decent, why would I give you $1 million on whatever it is that you sell? You know, those little details matter. Part of why I have such a sick logo for Garvin's Consulting is like, I got to make sure the logo is on point. Because if I can't even get a simple logo right, if my website looks jacked up, nobody really goes to my website. I don't have much traffic yet so far until this whole office hours thing goes nuts. Then I'll have a lot of traffic. So that's how it progresses. And up here, this is where we've got Sales Cloud. See, at first when you said for the kids in the back, I thought my mic position was wrong. So that's when I started, oh, you can't hear me? And then down here, we got billing. Oh, man. There we go. My whiteboard is so large, it's wobbling back and forth right now. So I don't know if you can tell. Then I would learn billing last. If we're talking specifically Revenue Cloud stuff. Now, if you decide later, man, I really love billing, which I don't think is a phrase I've heard anyone ever say in my whole life. But if you say, I really love billing, I really want to focus on that, cool. You still have to know where that data is coming from. Even if it's not Salesforce billing, it's going to an ERP, and maybe that's your accounting and finance platform. Great. You still have to know, okay, the integration sent some information over here. Where did that go? What did it create? What data points came with it? And then we need to be able to ultimately back out to say, what's the earliest that I know that information, you know? So if we think about, we ultimately want to know, how much money do we get from the healthcare industry? Let's say we're a consulting firm and we want to know, do some analysis at the end of the year for our finances to figure out what industries help make us the most money. Well, I know that that industry value is captured all the way up here on our lead. So that flows all the way through this entire process until we finally get to use it in our reporting for billing or something like that. Which is also why I have to have this fundamental knowledge. How does Sales Cloud work? How does the Salesforce platform work? Because that's what's going to help us think in a holistic manner about this whole process. The good and the bad about, CPQ specialist certification is that people think, oh, if I just get this certification, which has no prerequisites, by the way, at least last that I know of, I'd have to confirm that on Trailhead's website. But last I knew, there were no prerequisites to getting the CPQ specialist certification, which is good and bad. It's good because there's no obstacle to getting it, but it's bad because you are not forced to learn this stuff. And having taken that exam and having helped write the questions for the Revenue Cloud accredited professional exam while I was at Salesforce, they're very specific to that product. So if you don't know core, well, you might be architecting suboptimal solutions. That's a really long-winded answer for your question, but that's how I roll. So did it answer your question?
It did. Yeah. It helps me know where to focus my attention and learning. So, and to maximize the return on investment for where I'm focusing those efforts.
Absolutely. Now, if you're also trying to, I'll give you a bonus answer that you didn't ask for. What certification should I focus on as I'm building my way to CPQ specialist? Well, I'm glad you asked that question too. So for platform stuff, I mean, straightforward, admin, advanced admin. I tell people that advanced admin is basically what they couldn't fit on the first exam, which is already really broad. So don't worry about, oh, you should have 2 years of experience before taking advanced admin. No. Take the exam when you're ready for the exam. Who gives a shit how long you've been doing it? Just take it. Then for Sales Cloud, pretty obvious answer there. Sales Cloud consultant. That one starts to get into products, price book entries, forecasting. I think a territory planning or territory management. There's some other stuff I think that's in that. Then worry about your CPQ. Then worry about billing super badges, that kind of thing. From what I remember, the advanced billing specialist super badge is easier than the billing specialist super badge, which is perhaps ironic, but whatever. The world's built on irony and hypocrisy. So there we go. But that's the order in which I would learn things. That's how I would pair it with the certification specifically. I think the answer to this question would make a really good blog post.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm going to take the audio from this and I'm going to transcribe it with Otter to give me rough drafts of things that I can write. I'm trying to multi-purpose this whole thing. How can I get the most juice out of this lemon? Yeah, all of it. What about you, D? You got any questions?
No, Aaron knows me well. You said something about you were going off on the on that CPQ Sales Cloud, and before you jumped into CPQ, you said something about opportunity
Management.
Is that Were you gonna go deeper into that, or you're just gonna leave it as is for today?
Well, we can go deeper into it. I mean, opportunity management. Let's start with, what is opportunity management? Opportunity management is exactly what it sounds like. How do I manage my opportunities as a business? From the point that I've converted the lead and I create a new opportunity, or perhaps if they're an existing client, maybe I don't need to convert a lead. Maybe I'm just creating a new opportunity on the account or something like this. But what is the process by which my business manages opportunities to make money? And then we want to, of course, document that process. And then we work on building the system around that process. a lot of times you'll find that the process as it is today is, to put it diplomatically, suboptimal. I like using that word. It's nice and diplomatic. Jacked up tends to get people upset. But if I say it's a suboptimal business process, there we go. And I'll give you an example pulling from the real world, exactly what you wanted. I worked with a client once. They had CPQ, or they were going to implement CPQ. And I'm talking to them about their business process, opportunity management, and the CPQ process fits within that. And I actually have a folder here of, let me get a new window for Chrome. I'll pull up. I have a folder called CPQ extra stuff, and it is full of extra stuff, and it's going to help us with this, answer this question. I put it in this file on this tab. Okay, let me zoom in. Oh, that's too big. There we go. Okay. So now I'm going to share a visual. Forgive the visual. It was made in Excel. I am not a PowerPoint wizard. No one cares about my PowerPoint skills, especially me. So it's pretty clunky looking, but it will help illustrate some of these principles that we're talking about. And if you want access to this folder, I'll share the link in the chat, and then you can get access to it. So part of the challenge of learning all of this different stuff is understanding how the functions relate to the processes, relate to the products, relate to the objects. Okay. Now let's use a metaphor, because I love metaphors. Let's use a metaphor of flying, since I'm going to the airport after this to pick somebody up. We have our view from the ground, the various, I can literally see objects on the ground, right? So there's a wrench. I can look out the window of the airplane. I see somebody has a wrench on the ground. Oh, they totally just dropped that person's suitcase. Hope there wasn't anything valuable in that, because that fell from 5 feet up. And then we have, maybe we're taking off. We're above the city. We're a few hundred feet above the city. Okay, now we're approaching cruising altitude. We're getting a general sense of where we are. We see some lakes, we see rivers. Maybe the cars are small, but we can still see them. And now we're high enough up that the cars, if we see them, it's a pixel on our screen. We can barely see it. And now we're looking at the giant grids of the Midwest in the US, where it's all just a big grid underneath, and it's a mile between grid squares, right? That's how I think about this document, is how do I go from the cloud level to the street level, or to the ground level, from the clouds to the ground, and everything in between. So when we start our conversations about a lot of this different stuff, I want to start from the highest vantage point that I can. This is our executive level right here, C-levels. This is what they care about. They care about marketing, sales, finance and accounting, and they want reports for all that stuff. That's why analytics stretches across this whole thing, because analytics covers everything. Then we go down one level. What are the specific, now we're in COO land, or VP of operations. What are the specific processes involved in all these different things? This is old as hell also, by the way, so I want to remake this and pretty it up a little bit. But you got all of this as lead to cash. And within there, I've heard this called demand to opportunity. How do we generate demand for the business and have that create some deals in the pipeline eventually? Quote to cash. How do I sell stuff and get money? Quote to order, or CPQ. That's this piece right here, order to cash. These are the different names for the discrete processes that we have within the larger framework of lead to cash. From there, okay, since we're Salesforce specific resources, what are the specific Salesforce products that help us support these business processes, that help us support these functional areas? So we got Pardot, or Marketing Cloud, for your leads. Sales Cloud, that touches the leads. So we're kind of, that spreads across everything. And then I should have opportunity management in here too. Opportunity management would be kind of here. It would cover all of quote to cash or whatever. Like I said, I need to redraw this. or somebody with really good PowerPoint skills can redraw it or make an infographic. Then we got our CPQ, which fits inside of Sales Cloud. Salesforce billing is like, I don't know, it's a little hybridy because the billing functions start to get outside of Sales Cloud specifically because it's no longer opportunities, but it's all sitting on the platform. The whole thing's sitting on the platform. So maybe I redraw this to say, Salesforce platform, and then I have Sales Cloud, whatever. And then we get even deeper, and now we're at the tactical level. What are the specific pieces of metadata inside these products? What is the metadata? What are the objects that support the products, that support the process, that supports the function, that supports the business? And that's how we can start to think about this. Feel free to screenshot this if you want. I'll also share the link to the folder. But that's one of the things that I think about here, is how all of these different pieces and parts relate to one another. And when we get good at being an architect, we can oscillate. Highest level, lowest level. Who am I talking to? Oh, we're talking to the CFO. Great. I'm going to hang out up here. CFO does not give a shit that it's called an invoice object. They don't care what the API name is, any of that stuff. Similarly, this team Salesforce technical architect for my customer, well, if they're a good architect, they'll care about all of this different stuff, but they're going to be much more concerned with what is the actual infrastructure of the product or solution that we're implementing? How does that work with the other things in the system? How do the systems interact with each other? If I'm thinking like an enterprise architect, where I need to know we have SAP, we have Salesforce, we have, I don't know, so insert other products that are tangentially related to all of these different things. How are they all interacting, both at a functional level and at a technical level? So opportunity management, to get back to your original question, I mean, quite simply, it's just, how do you manage your opportunities? We're not very clever at naming business processes sometimes. Account management, how do you manage your accounts? How do you manage your contacts? How do you manage your leads? Is lead management. So don't overthink it. That's the fundamental question. And then each company has a process. A lot of times it's this whole, and you both probably have heard me go off on this whole, Slack first, everything should be run in Slack and Teams and email, and it's got to be quick. Got to happen right now. Got to be quick. All that does, drop my marker. I can make the outtake reel as well. All that does is complicates things, and it's unstructured. It causes stress. There's all sorts. There are myriad problems associated with it, but it's how a lot of places run. But we want to take that nebulous blob of stuff that happens to run the business, and we want to have clear, concise, descriptive, accurate processes that are documented so people know this is what happens. Here's who does it. Here's who has the ball before this person. Here's who has the ball after this person. These two people work on things at the same time over here. We need to know all of those different things. How am I supposed to build a structure to support the process if the process itself is undefined or ill-defined, which is usually the case? For most clients, there's some sort of process that's documented-ish, even if that's documented via word of mouth, which is documentation. We pass stories to each other for a long time before words came along, like actual written language. So those are some things to think about with that. I don't know if that was helpful or a good answer. Cool. Aaron, you're up if you got something. I'm going to stop sharing that image. Actually, there's another piece here that you haven't asked about, but I can talk through really quick. There's another that's really valuable as a learning tool. Let me zoom out one more. So in CPQ, one of the problems we have when we're first learning CPQ is mapping in our head where everything exists. We hear all of these different terms. The guy is selling in price rules and bundles and options and features and quote lines and all of this different stuff, right? We hear all these words, and it's just this morass is the wrong word, I think, but there's just this massive words that are thrown our way, and trying to filter those out, separate them, and put them into their appropriate buckets is a very difficult task. So I've done this for you. I was doing this in the CPQ classes. I would start teaching the week, and I would have these three drawn out on the whiteboard. And then as the week progressed, I would keep adding these words and I would build this structure out. And then I thought, well, I built this out about 10 times for 10 different classes, teaching a couple hundred people. Maybe I should document this since it seems to be very useful. Hey, Moho, glad to have you here. We're just talking through some stuff. We got a late start, technical bobbles and things like this. My internet went out, so now I'm tethered to my cell phone. It's been a mess, but hey, it's an MVP, right? We're just trying to get started. So welcome to the call.
All I can say is it worked to my advantage. I planned to be earlier, but then I got pulled into a work call and that went haywire. So, whatever happens, happens for the best. So I'll take it.
And my intuition, I knew that. So I thought, well, shit, we'll just get behind and then we'll just jump right
There
in.
you go.
So we were talking about this. I'll cover the ground rules real quick. So we got to be mindful. We're just trying to be helpful or kind, helpful. We'll be smart, help each other out. Confidentiality, keep that in mind. Make sure we're not revealing any private information because I'm going to upload this publicly on YouTube so that more people can learn from this. And then the final piece was generalizing questions. So I'm not here to come up with a whole solution design document for you, right? That's why I have a consulting business. But if you have questions about how something works, or you have a general scenario where you're going, I don't know where to start with this problem, that's one of the things we can talk about. Philosophically, we're all students, we're all teachers. And so we can help each other learn because we all have different experience. All of our experience has value, and there's perspectives that we can all have that will help each other. And so really I want it to be less of me lecturing. I don't like being lectured to. So this is more conversation and collaboration and discussion about these different things. That's going to give us a richer experience. It's going to make it more valuable. It's going to make my content more unique. So selfishly, I have that. So right now, to kind of catch you up to where we are, what you see on the screen is a visual. Nobody pays me for my graphic design skills. So Excel it is. These are the three primary screens that we deal with in CPQ. And one of the problems we have when we're first learning CPQ is I keep hearing all of these words. I don't know what they mean. I don't know where they are. Where does this function happen? That was what I was trying to solve with this. After teaching dozens of CPQ classes to hundreds of people, I started drawing this on the whiteboard each week. And then I realized, oh, maybe I should make this into something that's documentation because it doesn't exist anywhere else. So here it is. It ain't pretty, but it works. So now you can see very clearly, you know how I was kind of talking shit about guided selling earlier and how it's overrated. This is why. Guided selling functions in product selection. Guided selling doesn't happen here. It doesn't happen here. But what you'll find is that I love my Salesforce AEs. I love my Salesforce AEs or SEs. But they're trying to sell some software. And they'll use the phrase guided selling to talk about this function. They'll show it in the demo, etc. But what happens is the stakeholders who see that think it's like this magical journey with a wizard and you're going into the magical forest and it's going to be this beautiful thing where they guide your salesperson through the whole thing. And it's this wonderful, beautiful experience. No, it's a product filter. That's all it is. The difference though is we have search filters, we have guided selling. Both of them are filters that take all the products in the price book and whittle it down to something more reasonable. It's whether it's a tactical filter or a functional filter, technical or functional. Search filters, if I know the specific data point on the product record that I need to find, I know the product family, I know the product code, I know whatever, then search filters is a really good way to go. But if I don't know those pieces of information, guided selling might be a more useful tool. But what I've found through different implementations is I've never really had to recommend guided selling because a lot of the questions that I would be asking, well, how many users do they have? How much, what industry are they in? Whatever. A lot of that information is captured further forward in the opportunity management process, in the account management process. So the data often already exists. Now, architecturally, if I can find a way to get that data to the quote or someplace else that can be then used by CPQ search filters on one of the objects that's supported, I don't need guided selling. I can automatically search for this stuff for the user. So they only see things that are relevant and they don't have to remember, what did I populate on the account? What's on the opportunity? Man, I got to go back and look. They don't have to worry about that. What they know and experience is when I click add products, all I see is what I can sell. If I can't sell it, I don't see it. Simple. That eliminates the need for approval processes where it's like, well, you have something on here that you can't sell. It's literally impossible for them to sell it because they can't put it on the quote unless it's through a formal structured way to do it. So I'm a little bit despotic, like a totalitarian dictator when it comes to configuration. I don't want users doing anything I don't want them doing, but that's how I avoid a lot of extra work for the stakeholders down the road. Yeah.
I didn't want to the chime thing because you were speaking, right? But I want not sort of like a question, but I just wanted to put some color to it as well. And I don't know what our backgrounds are in this meeting because I joined late. But what I was thinking was, in terms of performance, as like when you're implementing this guided selling feature, right? Now there is this one filter that works on the UI level.
Yeah.
As you're typing, and then there's the approach that you're telling, like if I can use that data in the back end and show the products that they need. So performance wise, which is better, and implementation wise, which is easier. Is that even a good question? I don't even know. Like,
it's a great question. It's a fantastic question. And it's a question that we need to consider not just for Revenue Cloud, but for everything. What is the most performant? What is the best user experience? They might be opposed to each other, or they might be the same thing. Like, you see this a lot of let's take process filter versus a trigger, right? There are some cases, some people are, always use the declarative stuff. If you can, it's better. Well, but let's think about this for a moment. Let's not be so quick to jump to a solution design or to exclude possibilities, because there are times when a trigger is better than a flow. There are times that a flow is better than a trigger. Well, yeah, but it's going to take me, 2 days to build the flow because it's whatever. And I'll write the trigger in a half a day. Okay, that's fine. But that's fine, consultant. But our company doesn't have a developer. So if you write a trigger, now we have to go to you for everything. But at the same time, so it might take you longer to build the flow, but perhaps the flow is more optimal from a UI perspective, or maybe it's in some way more performant. We need to consider all of those different things, especially if our goal is to be an architect in this thing. We have to consider these. What's the best experience? What is the best performance? What I found, it seems like it's more prominent in for tech industry customers than it is for perhaps some other industries. But there's often this philosophy of, well, but it's really performant, therefore it's good. But not necessarily. It might be. Gmail is a great example. I use Gmail, but I don't use it in the browser. I use an email client. Why? Because I don't like the experience of Gmail. I would rather I use, the hell is it called? Airmail, I think is what it's called. I'm pretty sure this is what it's called, Airmail. I like it. It's great. I have all my things synced in. Everything's really nice. It's good UI, good experience. Cool. So is it the most performant way? No, it's not. It would be more performant to use the actual Gmail platform and all this other stuff. But I've made the choice as a user to use something that is slightly less performant, but is a better user experience. The way I tend to think about it is you have to weigh them both, and there's rarely a right answer here,
Right.
But you obviously want things to be performant, but if the difference is negligible, then I will probably err on the side of usability, because if it's hard to use, they won't use it. And what does every org struggle with? Adoption. Let's make it easy for the users to adopt this product. And maybe we improve the performance later, or maybe we kind of crawl, walk, run into it or something like this. Now, for your specific question about search filters versus guided selling, I would argue, and people could argue, feel free to argue against me. Feel free to disagree. I love the collision of ideas. So I would argue the search filters are better in both cases. It's better from a UI perspective because guided selling can be a little clunky to use if you're not if you don't hit the clear button, you want to do your filters again. it could be a little wonky, which then causes frustration. What does that do? That triggers an email sent from the user to you, and then you go that whole back and forth thing. Performance-wise, search filters requires fewer total records to be created. Less metadata is created, which means there's less to migrate. There's less potential technical debt. Search filters can often be faster, especially if I already know the data. I'm pulling the industry data down to the quote object with a cross-object formula field. I'm pulling the close date from the opportunity down via cross-object formula field, so that data is already there. It's off the page layout. It operates below the surface. And my search filters are going there to say, what's a scenario? Maybe all of our products have a sell by date or cannot sell after. Maybe they have a drop dead date on the product. Well, if that date was yesterday and I click, hey, I want to sell this product, I click add products. Well, that product's not going to show anymore in the search filters because it had an end of life date. So now it's impossible for the user to select it because it's already filtered out. And that filter is not changeable. So it's consultant answer for everything. It depends, right? When I taught a CPQ class once, one of the people in the class wrote out "it depends" on a paper plate and gave it to me because I said it so much. Just like, just hold up the plate, it's fine. But that's kind of how I would think about it. Guided selling sounds great on paper. It looks great in a demo. In my personal opinion, it's overrated and can sometimes cause more problems than it solves.
What sort of problems? Sorry, what sort of problems?
Mostly confusion for the end users.
Oh, okay.
Because if I start answering those questions in the guided selling flow, then it is essentially, yeah, I answer the questions, all that's great, but then I change my mind and I want to start changing some answers. Sometimes, not all the times, but sometimes changes in inputs further ahead kind of creates some wonkiness where the prior values are still stored in the records. They're called process inputs, I think, or something. It's a hidden related list on the quote object that you could pull in if you're testing and stuff. What I might do instead, and I had a friend write an article about it. Chris Hickman wrote an article about using Flow, like actually Salesforce Flow, to create process input records on the quote to basically fake guided selling, but using the flow as a way to do that. It was an idea that I had.
So I'm not from the Salesforce CPQ background. I'm from Conga background. So I'm trying to connect the dots here.
Yeah.
So you're saying like sort of like have mock lines in the card to give sort of snapshots of what the end product would look like to the customer. Is that what you're saying?
No, this is all about guided selling is all about product or bundle selection. The configuration of what the end result's going to look like, that happens here in this next step where I'm actually tweaking what's in the box. So this is I'm picking the general thing. I want to buy a lawnmower. Okay.
Right.
So I'm going to pick lawnmower. Great. Now we're in here and I get to choose, well, how big do you want the deck to be? What size wheels do you want? Do you want the wagon that goes with it? So now I put together the full package. Then I'm going to come here. It's going to price out based on how everything's been configured.
Okay.
So I would
guided
focus.
selling sort of guides you in that direction. Like,
guided selling helps me. Let's say I have 100 products in my price book. Okay. Guided selling will help me filter that down to which 10 bundles do I want to sell. And then I'll pick the one I want to sell and then it will let me configure that. Or if you think about, I love food examples. You go to a restaurant, right? You go to the Cheesecake Factory. The Cheesecake Factory has the biggest menu I've ever seen in my life. It's too much, right? There's too much stuff. So Cheesecake Factory starts by saying, do you want, I'll do this as a guided selling flow. Do you want vegetarian or non-vegetarian? I want non-vegetarian. Great. Do you want chicken, pork, or beef? Beef. Do you want steak or ground beef? Ground beef. Do you want a burger or spaghetti and meatballs. Spaghetti and meatballs. Great. So that's helping me take that giant Cheesecake Factory menu and whittle it down to spaghetti and meatballs. Now I say, I want spaghetti and meatballs. Cool. We go here. Do you want cheese on that? Do you want red sauce or white sauce? Do you want, I don't know, parsley on top or whatever? So
Do you want whole grain spaghetti and all of that? Like, or do you want like
yes, exactly. So I have the general thing that I want to eat here.
Got it.
Then I'm going to configure the specifics. Then I'm going to price it out once I know all the
And
specifics.
Filters are your vegetarian, non-vegetarian, Italian, or fusion.
Well,
and
it could be
then
either.
like guided selling would be specifics of those. I'm just trying to highlight the difference between guided selling and filters.
Search filters would say, I want my product family to be Italian. I want the vegetarian checkbox false, and I want the pasta checkbox true, or whatever.
And
because I
then,
know the specific values for the fields on the product records that I want to find. But if I'm
Right.
going, well, I don't really, it's like when you get the couples trying to figure out well, I don't really know what I want to eat, or you're trying to get your kid to decide, like,
and then
I don't have kids, but and I have a
or
dog.
the waiter, like what's popular, and that's guided
Yes.
selling, right? Right.
That's
right.
guided
Okay.
selling. It's also side tangent thing. What's popular? Terrible question in a restaurant. There's lots of popular, terrible things in the world. The question I like to ask, and this comes free with our CPQ sessions or Revenue Cloud sessions too. What's underrated? I love asking that question.
That's a great question, actually.
I'll ask it at a bar for a cocktail, or I'll ask it at a restaurant, because the server doesn't have an answer for it. They actually have to think. And then they go, well, can I see the menu? Because they don't even remember. It's like people don't order it as much as they should. I had the best chicken pot pie of my life with that question. So good. And they said,
also,
no.
I think a lot of times what happens, like they know what they can make the best, right? So whatever they make the best, they will like, you know what, this is underrated. I want you to try this. And that turns out because they put their heart and soul into it. So that's what
absolutely. Well, they also know, the server also knows that when I used to work at the Olive Garden, and depending on who the chef was that night is what I would tell the person. Oh, Ron's cooking tonight.
Cool.
Oh, Ron's cooking tonight. Okay, here's what you should order tonight because Ron is cooking. That's where that expertise starts to come in. But that's kind of what we were talking about on this particular call. And I would like to, I'll have to stop here. I got to go to the airport, pick somebody up. But I really want to thank the three of you for being here for the first call. I want to do this every week. So bring your questions. I think weekly is going to be just right. Friday afternoon, things start to slow down, wind into the weekend. It's like an hour of training once a week. And then if you can't make it, I'll just take the recordings and I'll upload it to YouTube. If you can't make it, and I'll come up with a more formal way to submit questions. But for now, you can just send me an email or go to my website, garvinsconsulting.com, and fill out the form, put your question in there, something like that. I don't know. Email's probably best for now until I come up with a better process. Maybe it'll be a office hours page on my website that's just a simple form that you can fill out, just submit your questions, and then I can push that into, I don't know, Google Sheet or something, Google Form. I don't know. I'll think about it, figure it out. But that's pretty much all I have for today. Any questions or comments? Cool. I'm gonna stop recording then. Go ahead.
Yeah. It's not like questions related to the thing, so you can stop recording. It's more of like